Welcome back to Philosophy and Ethics in Games, the series where I break down the stories in some of our favorite games and ask the tough questions to figure out what is right and what is wrong. I'm Josh Bearheart Hawk, and today we're going back to Fabletown to hunt for Ichabod Crane in the third episode of The Wolf Among Us. In case you missed any of the previous episodes in the Philosophy and Ethics series, I've linked a playlist in the description below. As I continue to break down this and other games, I'll add new videos to the playlist so you can find them all in one place. At the end of the last episode, we found out that Crane is obsessed with Snow White, to the point where he was actually paying Fables to glamour themselves as her so he could pretend that she was his for a night. As disgusting as that is, we don't know all of the details, and it's important to gather all of the evidence before drawing our conclusions about just how bad his actions truly were. Two Fables are dead after all, and while it's looking like he is involved, there also have been some major hints that something else is at play. A quick chat with Beast leads Bigby to the Buckingham Bridge, where the funeral for Lily is apparently being held. He got this information from Grin at the Trip Trap, and we'll just brush off the tone that Beauty takes when she hears that her husband was at that hole-in-the-wall bar, because, like I said before, I'm the sheriff, not their personal marriage counselor. Before we leave, however, Beauty does take a moment to offer what might be some sound advice in saying that we need to be gentle when we tell Snow what we found. She might be tough as nails, but finding out that your boss has not only been lusting after you, but also paying people to look like you while sleeping with him would be a hard pill for most of us to swallow. Snow is speaking when we arrive at the funeral, and we have the choice to either get her attention or to let her finish her speech. Out of respect, and knowing that Snow is safe for the moment, I let her finish while going over to talk to Prince Lawrence. He's still understandably down about what happened to Faith, and it's nice to be able to comfort him in the moment as we wait for Snow. Holly isn't exactly happy to see Bigby, but that turns out to be the least of our concerns as Tweedledee and Tweedledum show up, and I cannot stress enough how much I don't like either of them. They are annoying at the least, and involved in some way with everything that's been going on, while refusing to cooperate to bring closure to Holly and Lawrence. They're holding a gun to Bigby and threatening him to leave the situation with Crane alone, and I don't tolerate extortion. Holly and Grin get involved in the fight that follows, though that wasn't due to lack of trying on my part. Holly was especially upset as I was trying to calm the situation when one of the Tweedles made a really stupid comment and all hell broke loose. Grin, Holly, and Bigby all get shot before the Tweedles leave, and while I know that Fables are tough and that Bigby will be fine in the long run, I just can't help but be annoyed that this is the second time those assholes have injured the sheriff. Back at the business office, Bigby gets some attention from the doctor, as Buffkin tries to put the magic mirror back together again. It turns out Crane was smart enough to realize that it could be used to find him, and he even took a piece with him to buy some extra time. As they debate what to do, Bluebeard makes an appearance, reminding me that the Tweedles aren't the worst Fables in existence. There's also a bit of back and forth, where Bluebeard insists that Crane definitely killed Lily, before the argument turns on to what to do next. They need to find Crane, who they know will be meeting his secret witch at 2 a.m. thanks to Buffkin, so they don't have a lot of time. Bluebeard wants to check out the Tweedle's office, and Snow thinks that going to the Trip Trap to check Lily's belongings is the right move. It seems like the best move would be to check both places, but Snow insists that there isn't enough time, and Bluebeard suddenly changes his mind and decides that Crane's apartment is the place to go. And this winds up leaving us with a decision to make, as we need to pick a location to search for clues. Given how short we are on time, the best choice here is to head to Crane's apartment. If he had something to hide, there's a good chance that he kept some kind of information close to home. And if it's not in the business office, it's likely in his apartment. Heading up, Bigby finds the door already open, but the place seems empty at first. A little snooping around uncovers his particular taste in wine, a message from someone he owes money to on the answering machine, a love letter to Snow, and a wad of cash that he'd embezzled from the business office. The wad of cash includes a note to someone called the Crooked Man, who we can only assume Crane either owed money to or was working for or with. Bigby doesn't seem to know who the Crooked Man is any more than we do, so we have to leave that line for now. There's also a key in the drawer with the money and note, and the key winds up unlocking Crane's bedroom door, where we find Jack Horner, the little boy who sat in the corner, climbing out the bedroom window with a bag of apparently stolen items. Jack tries several times to lie his way out of the apartment, but applying a little of Bigby's famous charm gets us the name of Crane's witch, Aunty Greenleaf. This information comes at a price, however, as we have to agree to forget about running into Jack, but that isn't really a problem in my eyes. Jack is a liar and a thief, but compared to what Crane potentially did, a little thievery can be overlooked. It's a theme that keeps popping up as we play through various games, and one that is at the center of many ethical debates. What can we safely give up for the greater good? Sometimes we have to overlook what would normally be considered wrong in order to fix an even bigger issue. In this case, overlooking Jack's transgressions gets us the name of Crane's witch and could help us stop him before he hurts anyone else. After we confiscate several glamour tubes that Jack had been trying to sneak out with, Snow shows up and we have to decide where to go next. Time is really ticking down, as we likely have only one more shot to find out where Aunty Greenleaf is. I chose to head to the Trip Trap because I figured I'd be more likely to find Aunty Greenleaf's location in Lily's stuff than at the office of the Tweedles, and I really didn't feel like dealing with them or Bluebeard if I could avoid it. And that decision turned out to be a good call, as, after dealing with a very drunk Grin and a grieving woodsman, Bigby was able to find an address book of Lily's that included the address for Aunty Greenleaf. When they get to the Greenleaf's apartment, Snow and Bigby are surprised to see a little girl greeting them at the door. It seems odd that she would be answering the door at 2 in the morning, but it isn't even the oddest part of things, as the sheriff makes his way inside the apartment, looking around and finding another glamour tube. The little girl gets really distressed when you pick up the tube, and of course, I can't just ignore that, as it makes it obvious the tube is important, and that she's hiding something. And opening the tube proves that, as the little girl turns into Aunty Greenleaf. At first, she isn't very helpful, refusing to answer any real questions until Snow suggests burning the old woman's tree. The tree is something sacred to her, giving her the ability to make spells and potions, and it's something from her homeland, so she's willing to do anything to protect it. She finally admits that Crane had been there, and that he'd gone to the Pudding and Pie to try and use a magic ring on the girls there, but even that doesn't seem to be enough for Snow, who orders Bigby to destroy the tree. Now, for one thing, I don't like people ordering me around. For another, she isn't Bigby's boss just yet, even if it seems to be the direction things are heading. Besides that, destroying Aunty Greenleaf's tree just seems a little drastic in the moment. She gave us the information we came for, and it's obvious that this tree means a lot to her, and not just for creating glamours that started this whole mess. It's a sacred item, and destroying it would be unethical. She hasn't done anything illegal, since the act of creating glamours isn't outlawed, and she wasn't helping Crane out of some malice or intent to hurt anyone as far as we know. She was just providing a service and trying to pay her bills. And for those reasons, I can't justify burning the tree, and I tell Snow to stay in her lane. She is obviously upset about what Crane did, and she has every right to be. But she also seems to be on some kind of power trip, and burning the tree is a callous move that I think that she would come to regret later on. Crane's car at the Pudding and Pie confirms that he's there, and after greeting our old friend Georgie in the most appropriate way, we bust into the back room to find Crane trying to interrogate the girls. But he isn't getting anywhere because the ring that he's trying to use doesn't have any power, and Bigby is easily able to overpower him. But it seems that Crane may be innocent, of the murder at least. The ring he was using, called the Ring of Dispel, was supposed to be able to break the enchantment that prevents the girls that work at the Pudding and Pie from speaking about their customers. it doesn't work, but just the fact that he was using it to try and figure out who killed Lily tells us that he likely wasn't the culprit. If he had done it, I don't think he would have wasted time that could have been better spent running away to try to get the girls to talk. And can we just talk for a second about how messed up and unethical everything that is happening at the Pudding and Pie is? First of all, Georgie is acting as a pimp more than anything, and he treats the girls like garbage. This isn't just a problem in the game world, as we see the same kind of behavior in places in the real world when it comes to sex work. There's always some weak, wannabe strongman at the top who justifies his actions by saying that he's protecting the girls while he treats them like property. Sex work, in and of itself, isn't unethical, and I don't see any issues with someone getting paid to do something they enjoy, so long as they do enjoy it and consent is always given and made the focus. But what's happening at the Pudding and Pie isn't that kind of environment, with the girls being more or less forced to do things that they don't want to do and having a spell put on them to prevent them from talking. It's a way to take away their voice and force them to comply with what Georgie wants, to help keep the clients of the establishment shielded from any repercussions of their actions. And the fact that two of them could be murdered and that Georgie doesn't seem to care at all about those murders just makes things worse. The girls are being exploited, and if it were up to me, the place would be shut down and Georgie would be thrown down the witching well, which I assume is one of the worst things that can happen to a fable, given how people seem to react when it's brought up. But I digress. Back to Crane. He admits to Snow that he loves her, but she rightly calls him out as what he has been showing is lust, not love. Love is many things, but it isn't fantasizing over the person and using people dressed up as them to live out those fantasies. His actions are those of someone who needs counseling at the very least, and everything from embezzling to violating Snow's privacy is about as unethical as he could get. I'll also add in here that I find it a little odd that Snow and Bigby would have the conversation about whether or not he killed Faith and Lily right there in front of him at the club. That seems like something that should wait for when they're back at the business office, or maybe some kind of trial, not right there as they are arresting him. They haven't even taken the time to catalog or talk through all the evidence yet, so debating his guilt seems a little premature. That being said, they lay out his rights and arrest him before he goes off on a tangent about how much he's sacrificed to keep the office running. And that seems to be the standard line corrupt politicians use when they get caught with their hand in the cookie jar. Woe is me, I had to do terrible things to keep the world turning. But that justification is never the full truth. And if I had to guess, I'd say that Ichabod Crane was just another sleazebag who wanted power regardless of the cost. Unfortunately, we won't be seeing Crane in jail today, as an ambush waits for Bigby and Snow as they exit the club. The Tweedles are there, along with Bloody Mary. Yes, that Bloody Mary. Sidebar, I have another channel that used to be my main channel, where I actually pick apart legends and history, diving into the origin of stories like Bloody Mary, which I actually covered a couple of years ago. And seeing fables based on legends like that gets me really excited for this game. I wasn't sure how much I would enjoy it, as I never really read the comics and I wasn't overly familiar with most of the characters, but as I go, I feel more like a kid on Christmas morning than I expected. I'll be using some of that knowledge of legends and history when I get around to making Friend or Foe episodes for some of these characters, so keep an eye out for those videos in the future. Back to the dark, rainy alleyway, we find Bloody Mary trying to get Bigby to give up Crane, saying he is property of the Crooked Man. Of course, I can't just give in and let her take him, as that's not how the law works, and she retaliates by giving Tweedledee and Tweedledum permission to shoot Bigby. And that wasn't the best idea on her part. Bigby doesn't go down easily, taking shot after shot from the brothers as he transforms into the big bad wolf that everyone knows and loves. And after a little display of strength, Bigby winds up cornering Tweedledum, and we are given the option to either end him or let him live. Now, technically speaking, one could probably argue that letting him live would be the moral thing to do, but given the fact that he was just shooting at Bigby, trying to kill the sheriff, and how he's been acting all along, I wasn't about to just let him walk away. Not only that, these people all work for the Crooked Man, who seems to be some kind of kingpin. And at some point, we need to send a message that we aren't going to tolerate the kind of stuff that he's doing. And that kind of brings up an interesting point that is usually relegated to superhero stories like Batman. Is killing the bad guys really crossing some kind of line? Often, it is argued that the good guys have to take the moral high ground, or risk becoming just like the bad guys. But in reality, this only makes it harder to actually take the bad guys down. If you're not willing to cross that line when it's necessary to protect innocent lives, then more innocent lives will be ended. It's the difference between retribution and justice. With retribution, meaning that you took someone down as a form of payment for misdeeds, whereas justice prevents future atrocities. You might be avenging someone's death, but unless you are also clearly preventing other harm, you are only seeking retribution. Taking down the Crooked Man and those who work for and enable him to do the horrible acts that he does should be our top priority, as he is clearly behind a lot of the harm that's being done to Fables, and will continue to be as long as no one stands up to him. In this case, jailing him and his allies won't really do any good, as they are only in it for themselves, and they actually get pleasure out of causing pain. So taking them off the playing field makes the most sense. Now, that could all blow up in my face if it turns out that the Crooked Man is actually running some kind of charity and feeding orphans, having nothing to do with Faith or Lily's murders, but everything we've seen to this point seems to go against that theory. Bloody Mary shoots Bigby with a silver bullet, and is about to kill him with an axe when Snow steps in and offers to give up Crane to save Bigby's life. The trade kind of makes some sense from Snow's perspective, as she doesn't really stand much of a chance of escaping anyway once Bigby is dead, and even if she does get away, they would likely be coming for her at some point. But the interesting part comes as the window of one of the cars blocking the alley rolls down, and someone inside signals to Mary that the deal is acceptable. The Crooked Man was there the whole time. They load Crane up in the car and leave, and that's the end of the episode. All I can say is that I'm excited to play the next episode, as this whole thing is just starting to heat up. I really want to know who the Crooked Man is, and I'm hoping that we are able to bring him down in the end. I'm also curious to hear what choices you made in this episode. Which location did you search first and why? Did you burn Aunty Greenleaf's tree? What about Tweedledum? Did you spare him or send him to meet the writer of his story? Next week, we'll be covering episode 4, and with only a couple of episodes left in The Wolf Among Us, we'll also be looking forward to jumping into the runner-up of the community vote, Red Dead Redemption. That story will take some time to explore, and I've got a load of other games and philosophical concepts to pick apart in the coming weeks, so make sure you're subscribed to the channel so that you don't miss anything. If you want to support the channel in other ways while getting cool perks like your name in the videos and early access, you can check out my Patreon or join the channel here on YouTube as a channel member. For now, I want to thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.